Today we are checking out this new DDPAI X5 Pro dual dash camera with some pretty advanced features and a reasonable price. We're gonna install it in my BMW X7 and see how well it works during the day and night. But first, let's see what comes included in the box. So I got the dual dash camera in the box right here, but I also got a 32 gig micro SD card. Looking in the box here, we can see the kind of design that this is going to be. It's going to be flush on the windshield and it doesn't have a screen. So I really actually like this kind of design. I put it in my X7, a very similar design-wise camera, and I really like it because it's kind of out of the way. We can see that this is a dual channel recording, so we can do 4K on the front camera at 30 frames per second, and we can do 1080p at, I believe, also 30 frames per second. And this one, of course, can be changed to lower resolution but higher frame rate, so that's completely up to you. Another super cool thing about this camera is that it has a built-in 32 gig storage. So most of the cameras you have to put your own micro SD card in. This one already has 32 gigs pre-installed or kind of built in. Of course, you can add up to 128 gigs of high-speed memory to extend how much you're recording, but I'll just put in another 32 gigs, so we're going to be at 64. We can go up to 90 frames per second and 1080p for the front camera, so it's going to be much smoother footage, almost like what GoPro would do. We have super night vision, super cool to see this, and I think they can do this because they have WDR as well as 1.8 aperture on the sensor, and the sensor on this camera is actually a really good one. It's the Sony 8 megapixel IMX415 sensor, so you don't see that a lot on these cameras, but that's super nice to have and allows for good footage during the night and day. But of course, we're going to see that later in the video. Yes, 24-hour parking monitor if you use this Hardwire kit. We got 4K resolution as mentioned, high accuracy GPS, so it has built-in Wi-Fi and GPS, so that's great. You will also be able to see the speed of other drivers, which is pretty incredible to see on these kind of cameras. This camera is sub $200 at the time of making it. I think normally it's like $220, $230, which is a pretty good deal for what this is, at least on paper. We also have a G sensor to help save footage if something does happen, so it will monitor the footage, and if something happens, it gets saved in a separate folder that will not get erased. Also, this is using a super capacitor, not a battery, so that's great for super cold and super hot environments. A little bit more information on the resolution. It's actually 25 frames per second for the rear, but everything else I think that I've said so far is accurate. The field of view is 140 for the front and 125 for the rear, so should be able to capture most of what we're seeing out of the car. They do have a pretty cool app, so we'll check that out later on as well, but let's open it up and see what the camera actually looks like. Alright, so here is the camera itself. We have the 3M adhesive on top. So this is removable, so we can put this on the windshield and then slide it in. Nice smooth action here. Let's check out that lens. This is a 6-piece lens, or 6 lenses I guess, built into the camera. It is adjustable. Oh, I should use the adjuster here at the bottom. There it is. All right, on the top here we have the power in. This is a Type-C connector right there. We also have a micro SD card slot, reset button, and the power button. Not much else on the camera, no screen like I mentioned, which I like. We also have the user guide with some useful information. Tells you how to install it, how to power it on, where to route your wire, where to download the app, so good stuff like that. Replacement adhesive, so for the front and for the rear, good to see. And super cool to see also is this electrostatic film. So you stick that on your windshield and then you put the adhesive on this and it's going to stick to the glass. That way, if you want to remove it or move it to a different car, you don't have to rip this off the windshield, which is very difficult. You just kind of peel this off and then it comes together off of your car. Great to see. We have the Hardwire kit that's kind of also included in with the camera. Okay, so this is the rear camera. And the cable for the rear camera that's going to be plugging into the front camera here as well. Well, into this kit right here. All right, let's go get this installed in the car. Okay, so installing this dash camera is not as easy as most cameras, as it has to be hardwired in. I thought there was going to be a cigarette lighter adapter, but there wasn't, so you have to use one of the kits. It comes with this kit, so it just has like a standard kind of fuse that you would plug into the fuse box, but then you'd have to remove the original fuse, which I'm not a huge fan of, but yes, you can totally do that and it'll be probably fine. So you must use this included cable that comes with the camera, because this plugs into the camera. So this part goes into the camera, and then it gets split into 3 wires, right? So this wire goes all the way to the back for the rear camera, and then of course this one is the one that gets plugged into your fuse box, right? So you have 24 power, and you'll be able to do parking lot recordings and everything else like that. So pretty cool functionality, but you know, you have to use it this way. Now, I also got this additional wiring kit, and there is a reason for that. Why? Well, because this one has kind of a dually type connection here for the fuses, which I like. This way you're not replacing the original fuse, well, not directly. So what you would actually do is plug this into the fuse box, and then on the first one you install the original fuse that came on your fuse box already kind of plugged in, and then you take a secondary fuse, so one of these, like a 5 or 2 amp one, and plug it into the top one, and this will be the fuse for the camera itself. So that way it's kind of on an independent circuit in a way. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to modify that one with these connections so I can kind of combine the two and get it installed in my car that way. Of course, you don't have to do all of this. You can just use that one the way it came and it'll be fine. But I want to be extra careful on this car, and that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so here's what I did. I removed the original connectors on the original wiring that came with the camera, and then removed the 2 little connectors from my new kit. So the one that's going to plug into this. I'm just going to go solder these 2. You can also use little crimp connectors like this. This would be fine as well. I'm going to solder mine just to be a little bit more diligent in this. All right, so I soldered the wires together. That was pretty easy. Like I said, you can use the crimps if you like. And now I'm just going to cover it with a little bit of shrink tubing like that. And there you go. The conversion is now done. So now I have to find an accessory power in my fuse box and the constant 12 volts as well. To find the correct fuse, I'm just going to use one of these voltmeters. Of course, you can use an actual multimeter, but this one's just a little bit easier to use, and it shows you right there on your handle thing. So you connect this to the negative, and then you just touch this to one of the fuses to the positive, and then you get the voltage. I mean, it doesn't blink in real life, it just the camera picks it up that way. But yeah, this is 9.5 volts. We're going to do that so when the car is kind of off, that's going to be our constant power. So if this shows 12 volts and the car is off, that's going to be our constant power. And then we're going to turn the ignition on. And if we see 12 volts show up there at that time, but not previously, that's our ignition or accessory power that we're going to need. This BMW X7, I'm going to have to remove this plastic part right here, as well as that part right there, because the fuse box is just in that corner over there. So it's just a couple of clips right here. They unlock just like that. Okay, so that should drop. There it is. So that's out. I just have to remove this part, and we should be able to get to that fuse box and have a lot of options. Well, that just popped out by pulling on it. And there it is. Nice. Now we have access to everything that we need to. Okay, so I found a fuse that has constant power, which is going to be that first one right there in that row, so where the brown ones start. And then I pulled that out and plugged it into my device right here. So that 5 amp one, that's the one, the original one. And then the 2 amp one that's on the top, that's the one that's going to be powering my dash cam. And I'm just going to plug it in over there. And there it is, all plugged in. I added extra insulation just above the other fuses just to be sure, but yeah, everything looks good. Let's do the accessory one now. So I have tested all of these at the moment while the car is off, and none of them have power. So I'm gonna turn the ignition on and see if any of them have power. If they do, I know I can use them for my accessory power. And it looks like all of them now have power, so I think BMW has separated all of these are accessory ones, and all of this row is constant power, as well as these big ones. Pretty cool. So we're just going to use one of these fuses now. And done. So now we have constant power, this yellow one, and we have accessory power on this red one. Alright, so I connected the ground to this screw. I checked, it is ground. Those are all connected. I plugged in the wires. Now we can actually take the camera and plug it in to test it, make sure everything works. Okay, it's plugged in. Okay, cool. DDPAI. I call it DDPAI, but yeah, looks like it's on. So yep, rear camera's not connected, so that's fine. But yeah, everything's ready. So now we can route the wires and hide everything here. Plastic screw, interesting. I mean, it kind of works, but not great in my opinion. Okay, and done. Looks like nothing ever happened. Perfect. Now I'm just gonna route the rest of the wire. One of the negatives about this camera is that this huge bundle of wires, I somehow have to fit all of this under the roof liner here, and there's not a lot of space, so it's going to be a bit tough. Alright, well, I did it, but it was definitely a lot more difficult than I expected. This wire is really thick, so it's very hard getting it behind this headliner. Took me probably 30-40 minutes to get it in a way that I didn't, crush this. I did get this a little dirty, but I'll clean that up. That's no big deal. Now we can finally install the camera and run this wire all the way to the back. Okay, so the installation took longer than most other cameras, but it's for a good reason. This camera can now provide 24-hour protection as long as the car's battery stays above a preset voltage. After plugging it in, I went to the DDPAI app and clicked on the Connect New Device button, and then selected the screenless dashcam option. After connecting to the camera's Wi-Fi and answering a few questions, we are presented with the live view from the camera. This app is a little different from most other dashcam apps that I've used before. Looks like they're trying to go for a video game, social media type look, and it works in some ways. Other than the live view, you can also scroll the timeline here to view recorded footage as well as downloaded, and also toggle the on-screen information. One thing to note is that you can't download select videos or clips to your phone directly from the screen and have to do it via the timeline. I found it a little challenging to do so as I'm used to just downloading the clips to my phone. Going to the settings in the top right corner, we have many options and some that are awesome to see. For example, you can flip the image up, down, or side to side, enable higher definition video encoding, or even change the ADAS modes and sensitivity. You can also turn off the startup sound and lower the speaker volume if you don't care to be informed of the status while driving. Lower down on the menu, we can adjust the resolution, select what we want to see embedded in the video, and lastly, adjust the parking mode by selecting what kind of footage you want to have saved, video duration, and battery voltage cutoff as well. Lastly, you can copy video clips from the internal storage to the micro SD card here. This is a great option to have as you don't have to download the videos from the timeline and can just plug the micro SD card into your computer and copy over the files. this works great. Overall, the app is well designed and has a lot of features, but the camera did disconnect from my phone a couple of times while using it in a 15 to 20 minute period. With all of that out of the way, let's finally look at what this camera can do as far as video quality. I went on a drive later in the day to give it a real test, as the low sun usually creates a lot of glare and hard conditions for dash cameras. DDPAI X5 Pro did a great job though. Yes, there is some reflection around the edges, but the top is mostly to do with how I mounted it. I wanted to have it as far up on the windshield as possible, so you are seeing some of the fritz at the top of the windshield. Otherwise, the footage is very sharp and captures a lot of data. You can tell this is a true 4K resolution and not stretched out 1080p. License plates and signs are easy to read, and notice how the sky and bright areas are not blown out compared to the rest of the scene. This shows how well the WDR is working here. The rear camera is lower resolution, but even through dark tint on my rear glass, it still provides very clear pictures and decent frame rate. Alright, so let's see what the microphone is like on this DDPAI X5 Pro camera. I'm sitting about 2 feet away from the camera, and yeah, is it any good? Well, we'll know in the video editing. Switching over to night footage, it performs well in complete darkness and even better if there are some street lights. The dynamic range helps capture decent image, and the 1.8 aperture allows for a lot of light to come into the sensor. The rear camera has a harder time getting a lot of light, once again due to the tinted rear glass, but it manages to produce usable video. I would say this is probably the best performing rear camera out of all the cameras I have tested that were mounted on the interior. Pretty impressive even if it gets pretty pixelated in complete darkness. So what do I think of this camera? Well, it does a lot for the price, and the ADAS features, which I didn't even have time to get into, are just a great bonus. I also like the fast 5G Wi-Fi, the IMX415 sensor, and excellent true 4K resolution. Installing this one isn't very easy though, and you better be comfortable messing with fuses on your car or have it installed professionally. If you can deal with the installation part, you get a great camera that will protect you even when you are not there. The footage you have been seeing here is what is recorded when the car is shut off, so you get this nice time-lapse footage, or you can also select other options which will help you if anything happens while the car is parked. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.